All right, everybody, welcome back to another episode of Man Therapy. Um, Full disclosure right now, while this is being recorded, we haven't officially launched any episodes yet. And a little bit of that was poor planning on my part because I didn't realize that the holiday weekend was going to be here when I thought it was, and I didn't want to launch on a holiday weekend. So, we right now we're sitting towards May. We're sitting on May 30th, and this conversation is irrelevant to the people who are actually listening to this because it's just me basically saying I'm behind all the time on everything I do now these days.
Welcome to the club.
Exactly. How's Kyle doing, man?
I'm doing good. Yeah, things are good.
Yeah.
I hurt my finger pretty bad a couple weeks ago, and it's like feeling a little bit better every day. And I go to a hand surgeon on Monday to find out if I get to keep the end of my finger or not. So that's fingers crossed that I get good news there.
At least you can still do fingers crossed, man. Every time I try to do fingers crossed, I'm just flipping people off.
You're like, just use your imagination.
Exactly. Man, I'm doing okay. I had a great bowel movement this morning.
Oh, and that's the way, man.
Dude, you started off. This sounds so crazy. Like, I don't think women. I'm sure they don't. I know they don't talk about it, but they definitely, like, people. Once you just drop a load, and you're just like, dude, I feel great.
Oh yeah. You feel lighter. You feel the best thing about it is not having to worry about when it's going to come later.
Exactly.
That's the best part. Now you're free.
Exactly.
For the rest of the day.
Are you a one poop a day guy, or do you go multiple times?
Boy, that's a good question. I probably go twice. Definitely first thing in the morning, and then usually once, like another hour later. Then I'm probably usually good after that.
I go once at one time a day, and I'm done.
Wow.
And I'm done. And I'm proud of that.
Oh no, that's incredible. You should be proud of that.
Yeah.
My question to you is, what do you do on vacation? Like, are there circumstances that throw you off?
100%.
There are.
100%.
Oh, that's bad.
Traveling is definitely one of them. When I come outside of my routine, like there's parts of the year where I get up real early in the morning, and I go. So I don't drink any caffeine until after I'm done with whatever I'm doing in the morning. And then I'll slowly transition into an afternoon pooper.
Wow.
And so we're talking post lunch.
A
cup of coffee, and then usually an hour later, and then we're good to go.
Whoa.
But then there's times where you miss the routine of the morning poop, and I just don't poop. I don't poop until the next day.
Poor toilet.
Misses me. He misses me.
Oh, yeah, no, it might miss you, but it also knows what's coming.
Exactly. The double downer is what's coming. Oh,
man, the double danner.
Yep, exactly.
Dude, I can only imagine what hunting season does to you, because don't you have to get out there super early?
That's what I'm talking about. And I don't want to poop. I'd rather poop on a toilet, but if I got to poop I've pooped outside 100 times in my life. So hundreds of times. And so I'm okay with, I always bring a little bit of toilet paper with me, and hey, let me ask you a weird question. Where is the most awkward place you've ever taken a poop?
Boy, the most awkward place. Man, I was on a disc golf course one time, and there was so it's a public park technically, and like some of the ways the disc golf courses are laid out is like some of them don't have any restrooms at all, so you're just done for, and some of them the course, like, you start at the parking lot and then you just go way back into the woods forever, and then there's a turnaround where you come back, and it's kind of a running joke that every disc golfer knows that, like, it always happens when you're the farthest away from the bathroom.
Exactly.
And so often you're like, I'm fine. I'm not fine. I'm not fine. Yeah, and so you just have to, like, go in the woods.
Yeah, I'll say this is one of mine happened this past summer. So as you know, I had a boat for a while, for like two summers or something like that. And we didn't use it enough, so we sold it. But so I had to go to the bathroom while I was on the boat. So we beached it, and went up into the woods, and I was, dropped the swim trunks, and here comes two hikers down the trail. And it was weird. The girl didn't see me. They were like a younger couple. The girl didn't see me, but the guy did, and it was weird because I was hunched and squatted, and he made eye contact with me, and I made eye contact with him, and I gave him the head nod, like, what
Yeah,
up, like,
yeah. He was
and
cool,
he was
wasn't
like,
he?
he was cool, dude. He
Yep.
didn't he
Yeah.
didn't like try to take a picture or anything. So
Right. He didn't show his girlfriend. He just like, see that's a thing that guys do for each other.
exactly,
We're just cool about it. Man,
exactly.
one of my best friends lives in LA, and the traffic there can be horrible.
Oh, horrible.
And he got stuck in a traffic jam, and there's just no way out. There's just nowhere for you to go, and you're not going to go anywhere for hours. And he ended up having to just like put a trash bag under himself in his driver's seat and just shit his pants. He just had to make the conscious choice to just shit his pants because there's just nowhere to go
You
in the
know,
middle of the freeway.
I don't know what would happen. Like, I'm to the stage in my life where I give zero shits about what kind of happens as a result of my actions,
Right.
especially if I need to. Like,
Yeah.
I feel like I would be a-okay. Like, I could poop at the 50-yard line in a football stadium with everybody watching me if I had to.
Right.
I
Yeah.
just could,
Oh
right?
yeah.
I
When you're
don't,
in
and
dire
then I
straits,
don't care.
when you're sweating,
Yeah,
I'm
you're
with you,
trying to
dude.
hold it in, and it's just like, Mother Nature said, "Hey, you have no control. I'm in control right
Yep.
now.
Yep.
I'm
That's
in
right.
control." Like
Oh
that
man.
movie with Tom Hanks where that pirate comes in, he's like, "This is my boat now."
Yeah. Yeah. That's right. Yep.
Oh shit.
Ew.
That's a good conversation. Start
That is.
off
Yeah.
the
That's awesome.
combo about pooping.
Yep.
Anyway, today's topic. Are you ready?
I am.
Right? We kind of every before, like, we record these on Fridays, so we kind of have some time throughout the week to brainstorm. And today's topic, we kind of brainstormed the term role model for a man, as maybe, and that's a two-way street, right? Role model as, like, are we a role model to anybody? And then are we like, do we have role models in certain aspects of our life? And so I don't know, like, when you hear the term role model, what do you think, Kyle?
Man, I think about someone being purposefully aware of the impact they're having on someone else.
Mhm.
I think there's a chance that we're all examples whether we like it or not. Like if you are observable, then you are a role model. You
Yep.
are you are an example, I guess I should say.
Hmm.
And I think maybe to me a role model is like the acceptance of being an example
Yeah.
and then doing it purposefully.
Yeah.
Because there's this famous pro athletes are famous for saying, I'm not a role model. I'm just an athlete. So you know, don't pattern your life after me. Except they're foolish because they know that kids look up to them. So
Yeah.
they're not accepting the responsibility of being a role model, even though they are. So I think a role model is like being purposeful in recognizing that people are watching you, looking up to you, maybe wanting to emulate you, trying to figure out how to do life based on how you're doing it. What do
Yeah.
you think of when you think of role model?
So this is a weird, because this is a term that I have always, like, when I was a kid, like, there was a point where I was like, dude, I want to be like Bo Jackson. Like, to me, when I was growing up, Bo Jackson was it for me. Like,
Oh, for sure.
dude, Bo Jackson, Joe Montana, these were some of my, like, heroes, right? And then you get older and maybe it goes into a little bit of business, and you're like, man, like Steve Jobs, man, he's really got it going on, or some, like the old Apple Club,
Yeah.
like all these people were worshiping Steve Jobs and things like that. And then now, that was like a kid. It was always like a hero, right? Like a
Mm,
hero type of role. But
yeah.
then, that as I got older, it kind of changed, because then you learn about, like, for example, Steve Jobs. Yeah, he was really good at business, but he was also a huge disrespecting asshole. Same with,
Right.
like, Michael Jordan.
Yeah.
Like, they were focused on a goal. They didn't give a shit about anybody else. And I think like, that's not a role model, right?
Mm,
I don't know. I think a role model is someone, like you said, who has the intentions of being a role model,
Yeah.
right? So, like a teacher,
Yeah.
right? Your behavior, you're in a position that you've chosen to be. So, your character is very important. It is actually criteria for what it is that you're doing with your life.
Right.
Okay, you've chosen to be a teacher, so therefore you are a role model, whether you like it or not. And that is the bullet point in the job description that you have to adhere by,
Yeah. Yeah.
right?
The
Because you don't
point is
want your
to shape
actions.
people.
Yeah. So I look at a role model who's someone who wants to be a role model. Like I don't think I really look at athletes anymore as role models unless it is they're making it their job to be a role model.
Yeah.
So my definition of role model has really changed throughout throughout the my life, and like even now today, man, I don't even know if I would say I have any role models except for pieces of people that I know, let's say like my dad. There's really good there's things I don't know about anybody in that you know in life that kind of
Yeah.
maybe drive you a little crazy or
Yeah.
they upset you. But then there's also those things that my dad does. Let's say for example, my dad, if I'm looking towards another man, my dad does some things really well that he that I look at and I go, "Holy shit, man! I hope someday that I can be like that."
Yeah. When you said something I really connected with when you said that you basically emulate pieces of people. Like I
Mhm.
don't know that I have like one specific person. I know that I don't have one specific person that I want to like model my life after, but
Yeah.
I have a lot of really good people in my life. I have a lot of people in my life that I have tremendous respect for,
Mhm.
and I want to kind of take the best of each of them and try to apply it, and not in a way that I use to put myself down, but in a way that I'm excited to try to hold myself up to. And
Yeah.
and all of the best people in my life, I can channel them in the right situation. There's an activity that I do in counseling that I learned when I was training for this type of counseling type of therapy called EMDR, and the idea is it's called a virtual boardroom, and so or a mental or emotional boardroom. And what the idea is basically like if I was going to walk you through this, I'm not going to make you do this, but if I was going to walk you through this and you'll get the concept right away, I would basically have you close your eyes and picture like whatever your vision of like a boardroom is or a
Mhm.
comfortable space. So it could be an official boardroom, or for some people it's like sitting around the kitchen table to like talk about emotional stuff, right? And then I'd say, all right, who are the people in your life that you respect the most? Who do you really respect their word? Who do you really respect their behaviors? Who do you think is wise? Who do you look
Mhm.
up to? All of those things. And I'd say, imagine each of those people sitting around your conference table. Okay. And then whenever you're having struggles in life, or you've come to a fork in the road or a decision point, or you're not sure what to do, I want you to imagine yourself going into that room and seeing everybody around that table. And I want you to think about who would give you the best advice in that situation.
Yeah.
And I want you to go to them and ask them what they think you should do. And I want you to imagine what advice you think they would give. Because really, if you people in your life that you know well, you know what they would say. In fact, I
Right.
actually think that's like when I think about my own mortality and think about, wow, it's it makes me scared to be gone and I want to be there to guide my kids, then I know it's cheesy, but I do think like that is how we live on in our kids. I guess
Yeah.
talking about role modeling that fits in.
Mhm.
Um, that we instill in them values and ways of thinking and whatnot. So going back to this mental boardroom, you would ask them, hey, here's the situation. Here's what's going on. Like, I don't know what to do. What would you do? And you just imagine what they would do or imagine what they would say. And then
Yeah.
you basically take that advice as if they really gave it to you. And this could be a person that you actually know, or it could be somebody that you have never met. You could have Michael Jordan in your boardroom. Like,
Yeah.
Mike, we're down 13. There's 3 minutes left. They're bigger, stronger, faster. We're tired. I don't know what to do. What would you do? And Mike would be like, go for the throat.
Yeah.
You know, You're like, yeah,
Right.
that's right. Okay.
Right.
That's kind of the idea. You can
Right.
also go to your dad or whoever.
Right. Right. That's an interesting concept. And, you know, I do reach out to people like that I feel like in business. I am a really firm believer that you need to surround yourself with people who are better than you, especially if you are the owner of a business where there comes a point where you do have like an individual has weaknesses and their knowledge of certain scenarios is less than others. So I always I try to find a couple guys that I really trust and believe in that I reach out to and I run scenarios by them and
Yeah.
try to get their opinions. But one thing that I've noticed, whether it is business or life in general, when you ask people for advice, let's say you go, man, this guy's got it together, right? This guy's got it together. Well,
Hmm.
the issue that I have found comes up, and I want to hear what you have to say about this. It is they don't have the same life as I do. And
Yeah.
sometimes it's like, hey man, maybe you should just go buy this, or you should go do this, or take time and do this. Well, maybe I don't have the same amount of time as that person does, or the financial capabilities as that person does. And so now, like, my role model or someone that I'm looking to or going to for advice or looking how to emulate their life onto mine, it lives in a completely different environment than I do.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, that guy's got it together. Oh, he has 0 kids. That guy's got it
Right.
together. Oh, he's a
Right.
multimillionaire. You know what I mean?
Right.
And so
Oh yeah.
I feel like there's a little bit of risk when you do that.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah. I could see instead of asking like, what would you do here? Like maybe like, how would you think through this?
Yeah.
Or put yourself in my position, or was there a time before you were so successful that you went through something similar-ish and how did you do it?
Yeah.
But I actually think it's awesome that you would go talk to someone, um, even if they're not a perfect fit, because if you keep everything in your head, you only have access to the ideas that happen to pop into your head. And
Exactly.
then what happens is you get caught up in circular thinking and you keep running into the same stuck points, and then you
Hmm.
come to a conclusion that doesn't need to be come to. And
Yeah.
so when you talk to somebody else, even if their ideas aren't the fix, sometimes they trigger new ideas in you. And so
Right.
their ideas are really a stepping stone. So you might think you're stuck and you go to them and you're like, hey, here's the situation. What do you think I should do? And they're like, oh, you should buy this super expensive piece of equipment that you can't afford.
Hmm.
And you're like, oh shit, well, that's not going to work. But
Yeah.
then that might trigger a new idea that you wouldn't have had if you didn't talk to them. So I
Yeah.
still think it's a super good idea to get out of your own head and
Yeah.
go talk to somebody else just for an interjection of new ideas and new energy.
Right. That's huge. That's huge because I like I said, I do that when I need advice. Now, I work in a creative space. And
Okay.
so one thing that I do is in the space that I do not like to go out and consume other people's thoughts or ideas because
Mm,
I feel like if I see that thought or idea do well, then I instead of using my own creativity am going to mimic that
yeah.
and try to copy other
Yes.
people's creativity. And
Yeah.
so I like there's a part of me that is really lone wolf solo type
Yep.
of character to where I'm here right now because of me.
Yep.
And so I'm the person who got me here, so I'm also the person who needs to keep me moving forward.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like a balancing act.
I think that's awesome in a lot of ways. I also think that if you rely on that too much, you could end up stagnating.
100%. I feel that
So
sometimes in business. Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, you might have so it's kinda cool, like, the tools that got you there might not be the same tools that you need to keep moving forward.
Yep.
Or you can certainly keep the spirit of the things that got you there, but
Hmm.
then maybe, like, utilize some flexibility now that you're in a different place than you were when you first started. Also,
100%.
it's cool that you have that lens of, "I want this to be my own," that you would if you come to a stuck point and you take someone else hear someone else's advice or see how someone else does it,
Hmm.
you know in your mind that you don't want to copy it. So you could purposefully emulate it or do it your own way or say, okay, that's a really cool idea, but it does trigger a different idea in me. It's really similar to, back when you were an undergrad and you had to like learn about these topics and write a paper, but you weren't allowed to plagiarize. You had to understand the concept, but then you had to say it in your own words. I think as
100%.
long as you don't plagiarize, with on your platform and your podcast, which I know that you never would, I think you're set. I think there are some ideas that have been and will be rehashed thousands of times, and I think it could be really cool to hear how Dan thinks through it.
Right.
And even if you hear
Yeah.
somebody else's perspectives on it or see how they do it, you still might do it differently.
Yeah. Yeah. Who are your role models, maybe growing up or today?
Yeah, that's a good question. Well, my my mom is a role model of strength because she raised three hectic boys and she never backed down. And I don't know how she did it. It blows my mind every time I think about it. I'm 42 years old and I think about the stress of parenthood and my daughter's a total sweetheart. It's rare that I have to go toe to toe with her, but I do sometimes. And then my son is just very strong-willed. And then I just think about having three of him and
Yeah.
it blows my mind how she was able to do it because we were tough. And I can remember times like begging her for things, or like I'd pick up a shirt that I wanted when we were in the store and I would carry it the whole time we were walking through the store and I'm just begging and pleading for it and she never broke.
Yeah.
Never, not even once. There wasn't even one time that I came home with the thing that I had been carrying around
Right.
the store. And she was never mean. She never put me down. She never shit on me at all. She just wouldn't budge.
Yeah.
She knew her convictions. I think that's a thing that I've learned from her is to know who you are and what you stand for. Then you have a really solid foundation for saying yes or no to things.
Yeah.
And if you don't know what you're going to do, then somebody can break you by begging,
Yeah.
but she never allowed herself to be broken. So she was strong. She had the strongest morals. Everything was black and white. And I
Yep.
don't mean that she didn't have any flexibility. I just mean she knew if something was wrong, it's wrong. You couldn't
Mhm.
bend the rules. It was like,
Right.
nope, that's the rule, so you have to do it. So she was incredible. Um, I looked up to my dad for being he was always there for us. Not really like emotionally and stuff. And he worked a lot and we grew up on a farm and he was always outside working. But if my car broke down like all the way across town, he would come with the car trailer and pick it up.
Mhm.
Or he would just be there in an instant for whatever you needed. So, he wasn't the big, I love you hugs guy, but he would be there
Yeah.
for you in an instant at all times.
Yeah.
And he kept really good friendships. That was a cool thing to see. Um, it's a neat thing to see an adult male have friends. I think a
Yeah.
lot of adult males get more and more and more isolated, and so it's
100%.
nice to have a role model to of friendship and being able to keep friendships alive when you're an adult.
Yep.
Then my grandparents on my dad's side, very hard workers. I just always really respected that, and I wanted to work hard when I was with them. I would
Yeah.
see they wouldn't just one thing I didn't like about how my dad raised us would he would give us the crappy jobs he didn't want to do. And so it's like we lived on a gravel road, so every winter the plow would push a bunch of gravel into the ditch. And
Oh my
so then
God.
he'd be like, "All right, boys, did you rake all that gravel out of the grass?" And I don't know if you've ever tried to rake gravel out of grass, but it's just exactly as fun as it sounds. So
Yep.
you're just out there with rakes and it's just horrible and your hands are all blistered. And then he'd, come back a couple hours later and check on us. But if
Yeah.
we did that same exact chore at my grandparents' house, raking the gravel out of the grass, guess who was right next to us the whole time?
Right.
Grandpa and grandma.
Yeah.
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 How about you? Who comes to mind for you? I have others, by the way, and I
Yeah.
just don't want to like bogart the entire podcast. I
Oh
can
no,
think
man.
of
It's
multiple other
it's
great.
obviously work ethic. I look to the people who and even in our generation, I feel like the work ethic is not there like it was with my grandparents. And I mean, when I say not there, I mean it's not as consistent across our generation as it is with our parents or my grandparents, right? So like
Mm,
my both of my grandparents were farmers. If
mhm.
you did not work, you did not get money and you did not eat food, right? And
Yeah.
so, I mean, if you wanted something, it was a direct reflection of time equals what getting something that you need or want. Okay.
Yeah.
And so I saw that a lot with like in my parents as well. They worked hard, especially after my parents got divorced. My mom had to pick up multiple jobs just to make it.
Mhm.
And my dad, he's a hard worker. I mean, he would go in and stay in and do whatever he had to do to make his money, and that is hugely respectable
Yeah.
in my time, or in my opinion. So someone who goes who because I'm sure that there's 100 things my dad would have rather been doing than
Right?
going in at 5 in the morning and staying till, I don't know, 5 or 6, like 6:30, 7 o'clock at night. I'm
Yeah.
sure. I'm
Oh,
sure.
yeah.
But he did it. Right. And so the time that I saw, the time was a direct reflection of the success. And so from a work ethic standpoint, definitely my mom, my dad, my grandparents were
Yeah.
especially my grandparents, like huge role models. um and then, like, from a kindness standpoint, it's weird because my mom was like your mom, black and white. She had 2 wild boys, especially after a divorce,
Mhm.
and she had to control that. And how do you control force with additional force, like with equal force, right?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
so it's like she had to be tough after that, right? And so, um, but the one thing about my grandma who's still alive that I really think is awesome
Mhm.
is unconditional love towards somebody.
Mm.
This is something where in today's world, love has stipulations, meaning, like, if I don't know, maybe you're in a marriage where it's like the only reason your wife loves you is because you provide her with possessions and money and fancy things, right?
Mhm.
How sad would that be to live like that?
Yeah, that'd be
The cool
horrible.
th Yeah, so, like, unconditional, I think I learned to love my kids like my grandma loved her family, where it didn't matter what happened, there was always a place at her table for you.
Mm.
Like, my grandma, I could come hungover to turkey, like, Thanksgiving dinner. I would not get, ridiculed like
Mhm.
other like my family member would. But also the role of a mom and a role of a grandma are different, right?
Oh,
But
yeah.
I saw that in my grandma, where she just loved you. She
Yeah.
loved you no matter what. She didn't say shit except, "How can I love you?" Right?
Yeah.
And she just cared about she cared about everybody. And
Yeah.
she got shit on by my grandpa throughout her life a little bit. That,
Mhm.
some of the things you come to realize as you get older.
Yeah.
And guess what she did as she's getting shit on? She
What?
loved people. Right? She continued to put in the time and energy towards her family, and I look at that and I go, I want to be that to my kids.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So,
Yeah. What kind of a mom was your grandma to your mom?
see, I think she had to be stern. See,
Mhm.
that relationship I really am not I didn't know about.
Mhm.
I don't know too much about uh that. All I know is that my my mom was born in like 1950 7 or 8
Mhm.
or something like that. And so she grew up in the, 60s and 70s on a farm in Iowa, from a traditional like go to church every Sunday family.
Yeah.
And so she was a farm wife, which meant there's times where your responsibility is the house and the laundry and the cleaning, but
Yeah.
then come harvest time, you're driving a tractor, you're doing whatever it takes outside. I mean, it.
Oh, yeah.
And so I'm guessing it was like, kind of, I'm guessing it's like a reality check. That's a
Mm.
good question. I should probably talk to my mom about that, because that's a very interesting question.
Yeah, I wonder, there's a I I wish I could remember the phrase, the turning of the phrase off the top of my head, but something to the effect of if you don't raise your kids well, then you're going to have to raise your grandkids. But if
Yeah.
you raise your kids well, then you can just enjoy your grandkids.
Right.
And someone said it
Right.
more eloquently than that, but
Yeah.
I've seen that to be true so often. All these people that are around my age that I feel like are raised really well, they've got really cool kids, and the grandparents get to be like super fun and involved.
Yeah.
But the people that I know that are my age ish that were like, their parents didn't do a great job with them, and they weren't strict when they needed to be, and they didn't care, and they didn't, for whatever reason, they weren't able to. I shouldn't make assumptions about why, but then a lot of those families are messier,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah. Yeah. Let me ask you this. This popped in my head just now.
Hmm.
When someone brings up the term role model, is that person teaching or showing the right way?
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. I would say both, could be both, and probably more, I bet it's more powerful to be showing in terms of like living it. Like
Yeah.
role models, like modeling a role, which isn't necessarily like a job or a position. It's how do you
Mhm.
embody this way of being? So I think that's like something that you can observe someone do over like years, days,
Yeah.
weeks, months, and years, I think. So that's how I think of it. How
Yeah.
do you think of it?
I feel like if I am going to I don't know, this is where I struggle because I'm a coach,
Hmm.
right? And so my job as a coach is to teach kids how to properly do a thing, along with maybe some life lessons along the way. Like if you strike out, hey man, you can't just sit here and dwell on it and cry about it and let it affect your next at bat. You have to get over it, right?
Yeah.
And those are teaching moments.
Yep.
And so a showing moment would be like when shit goes wrong at the house, you have options. You can go bananas and you can like make a bigger deal, make it more complicated out of it, or you can show control and you can handle it, right?
Yeah.
And so those are two different things. And so the the thing that I struggle with is I've run into people in my life where at work or like other coaches or something like that, they're good at what they do, but then they remove themselves from that situation and they're nowhere like what they portray.
Mm,
Like for example, let's say I am a good coach. I'm great with kids. The kids enjoy my presence. But then I go home and I beat my wife or I drink or do drugs and
sure.
I am living this crazy lifestyle. I think part
Right.
of a role model is doing the right thing when nobody's watching.
Yeah. That's character for sure. I think
Yeah.
being a role model is being consistent living and embodying the traits and values that you say that you hold. And
Right.
so that anybody should be able to look at you anytime and see that that's how you're doing things. Because I
Yeah.
using your baseball example, it's there are teaching moments where you're teaching, but then it comes time to role model when, if you're telling a kid, hey, don't get frustrated when a bad thing happens. Well, then what happens? All the kids are looking to the coach when a bad thing happens. And if you get mad as a coach, well, now you're not role modeling what you were trying to teach them. So I think
100%.
that's like a beautiful opportunity for a coach. A kid strikes out and ends the game and hypothetically loses, air quotes, loses the game for the team. If the coach gets all mad at that kid, then he's not role modeling the values that he's trying to teach. But if the kid strikes out, game's lost, and the coach is like stays cool, calm, and collected, and then he role models all of the things that he was teaching to the kids. I think that's beautiful role modeling.
Is there a difference between a parent and a role model for your child? Should your child look at you as a role model, or should he look at you as dude, he's a good dad? Like, is there a difference or crossover?
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, I would. My knee jerk reaction to that is that they're the same thing.
Yeah.
I think I don't know that you can be a good dad without being a good role model. What are you if you're not role modeling good behaviors and good navigation of the world for your kid?
Yeah.
I think that's just how I guess that's how I define a good dad. Like, how else would you do it? Like, oh, he pays the bills, but he's mean to me. He
Yeah.
pays the bills, but he never talks to me. Like, no, that's
Yeah.
not. I wouldn't call. I think everything that I think I would say is a good dad. I would also say would be present in a good role model.
Yeah. Yeah. But here's the crazy thing, like, if my kid had a coach who talked to my son like I talk to my son, I would have a problem with that,
Mm,
right?
mm,
You know what I mean? So
mm.
it's like there's borders and there's lines that a dad can cross that a coach probably shouldn't. Do you agree?
I don't know if I agree with that.
Yeah.
I might even that might even be a place where I would challenge you to say, what is it about how you respect how a coach does things? What I don't know. Are you giving yourself a pass to do things as a dad that you wouldn't give yourself a pass to do as a coach? Are there different ways that you could do it as a dad that you're just not putting the energy into?
So I'm going to give you an example and I want you to tell me what you think. All right.
All
This is
right.
perfect. This is perfect. Um,
Set me up.
I have, it wasn't a setup. It wasn't a setup.
Sure, you've been planning this all week.
Right. Exactly. I'm just going to undercut Kyle
All
today,
right, all
make him
right.
look bad, make
Yeah,
him
you
look
got all the
bad.
answers.
Uh, at home all day. I'm at home all day with the kids. Hey, come on, go do this. They don't do it. Go do this. They don't do it. Hey, buddy, can you please go do this? The fuse is getting shorter, right? The fuse is getting shorter.
Mhm.
And so I've spent 8, 10, 12 hours with these kids, and they are just not, they're not responding to me being nice, right? They're not responding to um this the maybe the way you should do it.
Mhm.
And then finally, you're just like, hey, get off your fucking ass and go pick up the basement. Boom. And then they get up and they go do this.
Right.
Now, I would have a problem if my kid missed a couple ground balls and the coach goes, hey, fucker, why don't you get your head out of your ass and stop missing get your glove in the
Right.
dirt,
Right.
right? Number one, that's not your kid. You don't talk to other kids that way. You're
Yeah.
spending less time with them
Yeah.
throughout the course. So I feel like, but obviously, like once they get into high school, dude, then the kids are in the coach's hands. They're closer to adulthood. They can handle that type of, or they should
Mhm.
be able to handle that type of criticism.
Yeah.
So I don't
Yeah.
know.
Okay. I think that they are definitely two different relationships.
Right.
The relationship between father and son, depending on how it is, could likely tolerate more stress than
Yep.
the relationship between coach and player.
Mhm.
There are definitely things that you can't and shouldn't say or do as a coach that would get you in trouble for those reasons, but that you get away with as a parent because there's no oversight. I still don't necessarily think that it has to end up with by the way, I fall into that routine often as well of like,
Yeah.
nice didn't work. And so then I have to raise my voice or whatever the case may be. But I think just like a coach that's just starting out that really cares about coaching and wants to get good at it. So they learn better coaching techniques and they might even go to like coaching clinics and they might read books about coaching and like how to reach kids that are hard to reach and how to get buy-in on a team and all these things. Dude, I think that there's an equivalent with parenting, that some people do more than others,
Hmm.
that I think a person could read up on how to not yell at my kids and how to like how to get out of this cycle of I say it nice 5 times and then I have to yell, like how to give better directions the first time, how to cultivate that culture at home. So I think there's a really big crossover between the two. I think, again, I'm not perfect with this, so I'm not saying I'm holier than thou art. I'm just saying that with coaches, I think we have to hold ourselves to a higher standard. We feel like we have to hold ourselves to a higher standard because they're not our kids.
Mhm.
People are watching us.
Mhm.
And that almost felt like a little sad to say that we would hold ourselves to higher standards as coaches than we would
Mhm.
as parents. Like I didn't like how that felt when it came out of my mouth.
Yeah, that
That
is
felt
that
so
is
backwards to me of like, oh shit. I think I just revealed something about how I feel about my
right.
own parenting, which is like, damn it. I think I should put way more effort into like what's more important than parenting. You know,
Yeah.
that I would do some research into how to coach well, but I
Mhm.
wouldn't do research into how to parent well, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah. It's there's I don't know, man. It's just there's differences in I don't know, like so I look at a parent, right? A parent wears multiple hats, and I feel like role models, however, are responsible for a different part of of impressions. Like because you have to give someone the impression as a role model that you are doing this. And maybe
Mhm,
you are doing everything correct. But
mhm,
I think the difference between a role model and like a parent is preparation for when things go horribly wrong. And and sometimes I think a role model can get away with, hey, maybe the best thing to do in that scenario would just be to walk away and blah, blah,
yeah,
blah, and avoid it and maybe come back to fight another day. And as a
right.
parent, there's certain scenarios where I don't like that,
Yeah,
where you like, as a parent, I would maybe go, you stand up for yourself, you go confront that, and you handle business,
right.
right? I'm not saying be violent or anything, but if there's a bully at school, how about you try standing up for yourself and maybe and just be like, hey, listen, I'm not taking this anymore, or something
Oh,
like
yeah,
that.
yeah,
Where, and I believe role models can do that too. I don't know. I just feel like there's a thing where the weight of a parenting is just different than, like, obviously. So,
yeah,
um, I'll say this. Maybe I need to give a better example of, like, when things go wrong, like flat tires
yeah,
or, a high pressure scenario, how you handle high pressure.
mhm,
I just feel like a parent, in certain scenarios is going to have a different version of how they handle high pressure and still come out with a positive outcome versus like what a role model would. But
yeah. Okay,
there
fair.
is
And, you know,
overlap.
we might even be splitting hairs here. Yeah, I think there might
Right.
be a huge overlap that maybe a parent is like the ultimate role model, and you are the role model that never gets a break. You
Right.
are always being observed.
Right.
You're not
Right.
just being observed. You don't just have to turn it on for practice. You know, you are always being observed by your children, and you should be conscious and aware of that and recognizing that you are absolutely always role modeling for them,
Mhm.
whether it's the flat tire or the baseball game or the cleaning the basement or the getting off the video games or fill in the blank. You are
Yep.
always role modeling.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So we've just kind of, hmm, I think we just answered the question that I was going to ask.
Okay.
How do you check yourself? Sometimes the other day, I got after my oldest son, and it's weird. I treat him different. I do. I treat him different than I do the other two kids, my oldest boy. And I don't know why I do it. I'm harder on him. I
Mhm.
expect more out of him. And it's maybe like the Game of Thrones firstborn male mentality type
Mhm.
of deal. Like I'm preparing you to be the leader of this family after I'm gone
Yeah.
type of scenario. And
Yeah.
so um I got after him for some shit that like maybe it was because I was in a bad mood, but I had to check myself and I had to understand like after the moment passed, I had to check myself and I was like, "Oh my god, I overreacted." Like
Mhm.
how do you check yourself to come back and instead of barking at him, you're going to, "Hey man, I apologize. This is what I should have done."
Yeah, so it sounds like, so when you say how do you check yourself, to me that's like how do you catch yourself in the moment and stop yourself from barking?
Mhm.
It kind of sounds like what you're talking about is how do you repair? How do you
Well,
repair the
let's
relationship?
talk about both. Let's talk about
Okay.
checking yourself in a moment, and then,
Okay.
because we're human, we make
Yeah.
mistakes, and then how
Love
do
it.
you repair?
Love it. Okay. So the I'll just think a lot about how I do it. How to check yourself. So to be able to check myself, I need to have an understanding of how I want to do things.
Mhm,
And so I think we're doing our family a disservice if we haven't sat down and thought about the type of parents that we want to be.
mhm,
And so I've spent time thinking about how I want to be as a dad and how I want to be as a partner and friend and all of these different things. And so I have a set of values that I want to hold myself up to. Okay. So I already know how I want to be. And so then I try to keep those values in mind at all times and try to act according to them. And that's how I check myself is
mhm,
when I realize I'm not. Like, so I don't want to yell at my kids, but I do sometimes. And so if I'm getting really frustrated, then I'm like, all right, well, one of my values is that I don't yell at my kids. I don't want to scare them.
mhm.
And so when I'm doing something that goes against my values, then I have to check myself. I have to calm myself down. And I'll share this. When my I didn't grow up like, babysitting or around little kids. I had no skills with little kids. I didn't know how to do any of that. The first time I had to like take care of a little kid was my little kid, you know?
Okay.
And thank God for my wife because she's freaking incredible mom.
Yeah.
She already had kids before she met me and she like grew up babysitting, just incredible loving figure, but I didn't have any of that. Just like my poor daughter was just like the first baby I had anything to do with really. So I just love her to death, but man, I was so surprised at how angry I could get. It's like, I found a new part of me that I didn't know existed in a negative way, which is how frustrated I could get. I got so
Right.
mad when she's like 3 years old and she's like digging in her heels and no, and you're stupid and all the things, right? And then I didn't have any skills, so I would resort to yelling, and then I could see that I bet yours is even stronger than mine, but when I would raise my voice, it would scare her. And I'll never forget the look on her face of like
Yeah.
being like scared of
Mhm,
me. And I was like, "Oh my God, that's not how I want to be. Like this is crazy." So I realized I didn't want to be that way. Also, gave myself credit for being human and recognizing like it just is stressful. Dude, I for months, I literally wrote on the back of my hand with a Sharpie, BC for be calm. WA for walk away, DY for don't yell. I would write those things on the back of my hand because I knew I didn't want to I knew that I didn't want to yell, but when I was caught up in the moment, I basically couldn't help it. I didn't have access to all the insights that I had when I was in my right mind, but having it on the back of my hand, I would see it when I was like about to yell at her,
mhm.
and then I would walk away. I would go to my bedroom and I would calm down. I would stew. Maybe I'd like do a bunch of push-ups till I couldn't anymore, or do a bunch of just body weight squats to just like burn it off. And I wouldn't come back out until I was calmer. And
Yeah.
that was a good opportunity for me too to like, do tag team. All right, wife, you're in. I had to be that. That takes humility too, by the way, to
Yeah.
like tag out and let your spouse tag in because you're in this power struggle with your kids.
Yeah.
But when it comes to checking yourself, that was a really powerful thing for me to do, which was to write on the back of my hand with Sharpie, don't yell or walk
Yeah.
away or stay calm.
Right.
And then I would think, I would also try to remind myself that this moment is probably not important enough for me to damage our relationship over. So I didn't want to wreck our relationship because overreacted to a situation.
Yeah.
Another good example of it was my daughter was just being so defiant and nothing was working. And really, I would blame, at the time, I would blame her for not listening. But, in retrospect, it's because I didn't have strong enough parenting skills. But
Yeah.
I spanked her. I resorted to spanking her. And it's the first and only time I ever spanked her. And she wasn't listening. And she should obviously do the thing I'm telling her to do. She's being super defiant. Maybe call it. I'm sure she was talking back to me and stuff. And I spanked her. and she looked up at me in shock, and
Mm,
she looked at me like I betrayed her,
mm,
and like I can picture her face in my head right now, and
yeah,
I felt like I betrayed her. I was like, oh my god, I just hit my kid, like I just hit
yeah,
her. That's crazy. Like, I'm not that person, you
yeah,
know? And so I decided right then, like, ooh, I don't like how that felt. I think I just damaged our relationship. She was absolutely in shock that I was capable of hitting her. And
yeah,
that really helped solidify, oh man, I need to build up my skills. If I keep resorting to like yelling and spanking or the threat of spanking, like, dude, that's gonna wear off at some point. All I'm gonna do is push them away from me.
yeah,
So that was like a really important moment in my life. So
yeah.
that's like checking myself, and then um well, I'll press pause there. What are your thoughts about that, and what are your thoughts about checking yourself? Then we'll go into repair.
Man, honestly, I can remember the moments where I think some people have it and some people don't,
Mm,
right? And I think a lot of it has to do with how they were taught to manage high pressure situations. Because if you have never been in any type of high pressure
mm,
situation,
mhm.
then you don't know how to manage high pressure situations,
That's true.
period.
Yeah.
Right. And
Yeah.
so
Mm,
for me, I went through a divorce with my dad and my mom, and then my mom got divorced again. And so that one was ugly. And so with a guy who was just a scumbag. And so I was in, as a kid, high pressure situations. I've
mm,
been in other high pressure, dangerous situations in my life a couple times. And the more that I was in those scenarios, the more that I knew that if I lost control, then that's when really bad things happen.
mhm.
Right. And I hate to say it, but the perfect quote comes from a movie with Keanu Reeves and Patrick Swayze in the movie Point Break, where what does he say? He's like, um, fear causes hesitation, and hesitation causes your worst nightmares to come true. Right. And so what that is like if you're out of control, the scenario just keeps getting worse.
Yeah.
And so there were times in uh fatherhood now where I have had to basically come to a point, and then you've been there enough times where you're like, oh, this ain't like it ain't gonna work out. It's time to take a step back.
Oh yeah.
Right.
Oh
Or
yeah.
before you get there, your mind, like I've trained my mind to not take it to certain places unless I absolutely have to.
Yeah.
And so um, I think that's the hardest part of dealing with conflict or high pressure scenarios is being able to know when to take a backward step versus going full bore at something.
Yeah. Yep. Yep. Yeah. I totally agree with that. I like that too.
So how did you repair with your daughter then?
Yeah, I made a commitment to myself that I was gonna take ownership for everything that I ever did that I truly believed was wrong. And so I I actually do this pretty regularly, will apologize to my kids for yelling or for getting too angry. I definitely went and apologized for spanking her,
Mhm.
and told her that I was sorry and that I shouldn't have done that and that she didn't deserve that. That was my fault that I did that and not her fault that I did that, and that I was going to try to figure out how to control my anger better than that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
I owned it, and I decided, I can't remember if I mentioned this on this podcast yet or not, but, you know, I've already decided that, you know, I'm doing my best as a parent, but if my kids come to me as adults or later in life and say, "Hey, dad, like, you didn't do very good at this thing," or "I remember when you did X, Y, or Z, and, like, that sucked," or "That made me feel like shit," or whatever the thing is, I'm not gonna be defensive. I'm gonna own it, man.
Yeah.
I'm gonna take it on the chin and say, "Yeah, you're right. I wish I wouldn't have been like that either." If they say, "You yelled way too much when we were kids," I'm gonna say, "Yeah, I wish I wouldn't have done that. I apologize for that. You know, I was really frustrated. I didn't have better skills to manage that. You know, also you guys were being very frustrating, but you'll see when you have kids that kids are really frustrating." And
Yeah.
so, you know,
Yeah.
I'm gonna own it.
Yeah. I was on a doom scroll on Instagram a while ago, and I came across an old lady, and I think she was in her like late 80s, and they asked her the question like, "What do you what do you wish that you would have done differently as a parent or a mother?" And she
Mhm.
goes, I wished I would have envisioned myself as an 80-year-old looking back at this exact moment and saying, is this worth it?"
Mm,
And most oftentimes it's probably not. Like,
mhm.
your reaction as a parent is probably not worth it, especially when your anger, and that's easy for an 80-year-old to say who's
Yeah.
well removed from it and now maybe in grandparent mode, that the grandparent, depending on your scenario, like
Yeah.
grandparents in my family have always been the, let's get them hopped up on sugar, let's love them to death and then pass them back to the parents, right? It's
Right,
like,
right.
um it's interesting, the spanking and the yelling thing,
Mhm.
because I I've done that. Like, I've spanked every one of my kids. Uh, I mean, it's been years since I've done it, but I have in the
Yeah.
past. I used it as a tool, to a behavioral tool. I have used yelling as a tool. Both of them last resorts.
Mhm.
So, but here's the thing I think people need to be careful for, because it worked.
Yeah.
Spanking and yelling, in my opinion, work in
Yeah.
certain scenarios, because now there were times where I would be like, please go pick up your shoes off the living room floor and go set them by the door, or clean up your room, or make your bed, or empty the dishwasher, whatever the case is. And there was the conflict to do it, right? Or, hey, stop hitting your brother, stop spitting or biting, or whatever the case is. You fill in the blank.
I know, right? Yeah.
And I did a quick swat on the butt. It got their attention. Now, the outcome of how I've parented and how me and my wife have parented have resulted in our children, for the most part, doing what we say.
Mhm.
Hey, do me a favor. Would you please? I'm out of respect, and I respect them. So I say, please. Hey, do me a favor. Would you please empty the dishwasher? Boom. They may do a type sigh, but they go and do it.
Yeah.
Right? Hey, go outside, pick up sticks under the tree. But they go and do it. But this is what I am always concerned. Like, this is what I am concerned about. Are they doing that out of fear of the consequence of not doing it, or are they doing it because they know it's the right thing to do?
Yeah. Right. Yeah. I don't know the answer to that question either. Yeah, because once you've interjected the fear of getting hit, then you don't know.
Mhm.
I also think about, like spanking. I think it's tricky because, like you say, it does work. It might be like way overkill though. I think there might be other ways to get the same results that you want
Right.
if you spend. I'm not saying you specifically, I think
Yeah.
generally speaking, if you, do some more research and figure out other ways to parent. I think you also do introduce it as, if we are saying role modeling, like you've now role modeled that hitting is okay.
Yeah.
Also you were the aggressor in that, like if I were to teach my son or my daughter, like, don't start fights but finish them, but here I am, like, they didn't hit me but I hit them.
Right.
I think that's a tricky thing. That's confusing for kids.
Right. I
Especially
agree.
since they see it works, like they felt how powerful you were. They felt how powerless they felt when you spanked them.
Mhm.
And so they might want to be able to do that to someone else too. Um, I also think it sounds like you didn't fall into this trap, but I think it is a trap that some folks do fall into, is when you find something that works, then you get lazy and you don't
Mhm.
try to find other avenues. And so you just like
100%.
overutilize that, and that just becomes the way because you finally found something that worked. And then that's pretty shitty.
Yeah.
Um, Also, I've heard it said, one of the arguments for spanking, which I think is pretty clear that I'm not for spanking, but an
Yeah.
argument for spanking is like, it's okay as long as you're in control and you're using it purposefully as as a behavioral teaching method.
Right.
You know what? Like, I hear that, and also, how often though does a parent spank because they're frustrated though? You're it's pretty rare that a parent's like cool, calm, and collected and chooses to spank their kids. So
Yeah.
I think like a part of the problem is that spanking is a thing that we do to our kids partially out of our anger at them. So like
Uh-huh.
we could
Yeah.
say we're doing it to like, encourage them to do something or to stop doing something. But I think we'd be lying to ourselves if we didn't admit that part of it was because we were mad at them. And so then here we are. You would have to admit that you're hitting your kid
Yeah.
because you're mad at them.
Yeah.
And if that doesn't make you feel like shit, then I don't know.
Oh, yeah.
Then you and I can't be close.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Yeah, there's definitely a balancing act, but I will say that I think the tool itself for behavior, like here I am trying to justify what you just said, like I'm trying to say it's okay to hit your kids, right? Like, but here's what
Right
I've
in the bridge.
done. So like, dude, I was a product of old school methods. Yardstick, wooden spoon. So I can remember when I was a kid and I did something that, and I was like, again, me and my brother being wild animals, living in a house. My mom took a wooden spoon. She made me put my hands on the counter and she was spanking me with it and it broke. And I started laughing
Hmm.
at her. And so she's like, "You're grounded from like Nintendo." Like,
Yeah,
so
right.
I had more fear of being grounded from Nintendo than I did the wooden
Oh
spoon
yeah.
at that point. But
Oh yeah.
what I'm getting at is me and my brother were raised with spankings. We were raised with yardsticks and like belts and things like that. And it was never a beating per se. It
Right.
was an attention getting device. That's how I used it with mine, but it was instantly followed up by a very, very big dosage of love
Hmm.
and education.
Hmm.
So it's like, I'm sorry that I had to use this method to get your attention. But
Yeah.
now that I have it, I want to let you know that the reason you shouldn't do this is because
Yeah.
you could get hurt. You could do
Right.
this. And I love you no matter what. Like,
Right.
and so you followed up. And then here's what I see my kids not ever avoiding me. They
Yeah.
want to be around me. They want to sit on my lap. They want to give me the hugs.
Yeah.
After that, they may be crying a little bit and they're scared and they're pissed that I spanked them, but there's still this connection that I did not break. So I don't know. Maybe and I could be wrong, man. I could be wrong.
Well, I mean, I'm sure there's better and worse ways of doing anything, right?
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
I think that would be an example of a better way to do it if you're going to do that. Also, it sounds like you and whoever spanked you and whatnot also put in the work to build the relationship.
100%.
Because
100%.
the same exact spanking or getting hit with a spoon without the relationship would really feel a lot different and have a
Right.
different lasting impact. I got
Right.
I got spanked when I was a kid for sure, and I have a really funny memory of my grandma getting so mad at us, and she would spank us with this like super soft plush house slipper, and it would hurt. I mean, she may as well have given us a massage, right? So she's hitting us with this house slipper, and we're going, "Oh no, grandma, no! Ouch, stop!" And she's just spanking us with this thing. And to this day, I wonder if she like knew that it didn't hurt, or if she was like,
Yeah.
if she thought she was really laying into us. I don't know, but it's just it makes me laugh every time I think about it. Super, super soft. It probably felt good. I liked when she did it.
You were faking it.
Oh,
You were
dude,
faking
we were
it.
hamming it up so
Yeah.
bad. It was so fun. Yeah, it was really funny. No,
Uh,
grandma, stop! Ouch!
yeah. Yeah.
Oh,
This
there's a story that I wanted to share that I didn't know exactly where to fit it in, but I would like to fit it in. So I'll just do it imperfectly.
Mhm.
There was a friend of mine who I actually already mentioned him. He's the one that shit his pants in his car
Yep.
in
Shout out.
traffic.
Shout
Yep,
out.
yep. And his his dad, I have a lot of respect for him. He's just like the coolest, calmest, most collected person, calm under fire. Nothing bothers him. Um, I've always looked up to him for that. We used to take this yearly trip to the Boundary Waters, and we'd go up there, and our goal was to go as deep into the Boundary Waters as we could. Our goal was to like try to not see another human for
Mhm.
days, right? So we would go way, way in. And so that's a lot of canoe time. So you're sitting in a canoe for a really long time, paddling across a lot of lakes, right? For a long
Yep.
time. Your back's hurting, everything's hurting. So I ended up in a canoe with him, and nothing else to do but chat because you're in there for hours.
Mhm.
And he was retired, but he was a like a really high positioned lawyer in Minneapolis. Extremely high stress job, long days, days on end. So super, super stressful. Um, I asked him in the canoe, I said, his name's Craig. It's like, Craig, how are you always able to stay so calm? How come nothing bothers you? I said, I really respect that a lot about you. And he said, he said, let me tell you a story. He said that one year, he, within the past number of years, he was sitting down watching old family videos of Christmas morning. So like when his kids were little, watching them open presents and all the fun and all the excitement. And they had a camera propped up recording the whole thing. And he said, I saw myself on camera so frustrated, so angry, so irritated. Stop being so loud. Quit making a mess. Put that over there. Da 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 da. And he said, it just floored me
Yeah.
seeing myself
Yeah.
behaving like that because he said he never saw it before. And he realized that's how he was all the time. He's so high stress job, stressed out all the time. He had 3 kids. The first 2 were boys, and I know they were rambunctious as hell. And he was just stressed to the max and grumpy. And he said seeing himself on video really did a number on him. And he said he was different from that day forward, that he never wanted to be like that. And he realized I need to be calm. I can't be doing this to my family. And that was really powerful because I didn't get to have a video camera on myself, but I imagined it. And that made me, what that did was it started making me just more aware of when I was doing that. I'm like, dude, what are you doing, Kyle? And I would kind of channel my inner Craig and be like, all right, that's not how we're going to do this.
Yeah. Yeah. Self-reflection.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That's that's huge, man. I do that a lot, actually, and I do it. I don't know. I think there's times where anybody can go down an obsessive compulsive disorder, but lately I've been thinking a lot about my actions. Like,
Mm-hmm.
did I do the right thing? And I don't know why all of a sudden it's popped up
Mm-hmm.
with me.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and a lot of it is, I don't know. Like, I feel as a coach, um, I'll give an example in football this year. In football this year, I had a kid who came from a bad, maybe bad's not the right word, different upraising than me, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like there were times where he didn't have any socks playing football. He was not prepared, didn't come with water, right?
Yeah.
And some of this is a parental thing, right?
Yeah.
And so and then, like I can name a couple where I I looked back and I'm like, dude, what are you doing? You got to have socks. You got to have this. You got to have that. I'm like, dude, this is not this kid's fault.
Right.
This is not his fault why he didn't bring, like, one practice, he forgot his cleats. You know how hard it is to do a football practice in Crocs? You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And so, like, I'm
Yeah.
just like, okay, it's not your fault. You got to get past it. And so I've been doing a lot of that to the point where I'm just like, I almost feel, okay, I am in control and I want to portray this role model type vibe to people
Mm-hmm.
because I have seen this firsthand, that attitude and mood are contagious. Where
Yeah.
if you're in a negative grr type mood, you take that home, you take that to your kids, the house is ruined after that. But if you are able to control it, say, like, I'm not going to let my bad day go to this part. What happens is you change your mood, you change your behavior, you hype others up, and you bring that positive energy. It's contagious to where it then will reflect back on you, and any bad day that you've had is now a good day because everybody around you is having a good day because you decided to make a change. And I
Yeah.
think that's very impactful.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. So yeah, so you're saying you would catch yourself um thinking negative thoughts about this kid being frustrated, and then you had to
Right.
check yourself and be like, no, that's not how I want to be. That's not the
Right.
energy I want to bring to this situation. Since you
Right.
checked yourself, you were able to proceed in a different way that made everything much more effective.
Right. Right.
Nice.
Yeah, absolutely.
Love it.
Yeah, buddy. What else do we need to talk about as far as role models and who we like? How about this? Is it our job as parents to tell our kids who and who not to look at as role models?
Mm. Hmm. I think I think we can always be sharing our values. We can't control what our kids do, but I think we can certainly express why we do or don't think it's a good idea for them to look up to someone else. And we can't control then if they do or don't look up to that person.
Right.
I don't like the flashiest athletes that are super cocky. But guess who a lot of kids are like attracted to?
Yep.
The cockiest athletes,
Yep.
that are super full of themselves. So I might just use that as as an opportunity to just expose them to the family values of like, that's not how we do things, or he's doing that to show off, or things like that. Fully recognizing that I'm not going to be able to stop my kid from liking this guy, but I think like I'm just always trying to bathe my kids in family values so that they have an so that it's always going to be there. It's like, have you ever dipped a candle before? Have you ever made a candle? It's just a wick and you just start dipping it. You have this hot wax and you just start dipping a wick into hot wax. And every time you dip a candle into hot wax, it picks up one small layer. And so you
Hmm.
do it hundreds of times, and it's just the small layer after small layer after small layer after small layer. It gets bigger.
Yep.
I kind of think that's how parenting works, that we're always trying to express our values to our kids, and each time we
Yeah.
do, it's another little layer, and each little layer doesn't seem like much at all, but by the time they're 10, 15, 20, 25, man, they've heard it a lot, and
Yeah.
it's well instilled. So, no, I
Yeah.
don't think I can control who they see as a role model, but I'm always trying to educate them about family values.
Yeah. That's good because my example on that was I grew up in the 90s. So, obviously I couldn't relate to any of the album because it was all like like post LA Riot, but it
Yeah.
was like I grew up listening to The Chronic by
Yeah.
Dr. Dre. I mean,
Oh
that
yeah.
was that album was huge even
Oh yeah.
in, you know, white part of the Midwest,
Oh
Iowa,
yeah.
like
It was
2%
it was
minorities,
huge.
you
Huge
know,
here.
huge. And so um I, my dad was frustrated that I listened to that type of music, and it's funny when you start to catch yourself doing the uncool stuff that your parents did, where
Yeah.
I was actually listening to the lyrics of a song that my kid was playing, and it was like drugs this, you know, boobs this, butt that, like, it's just your typical rap music, right?
Yeah, send that one to
And
me.
exactly. And so I was like, this guy's dead, right? Because he overdosed from drugs. All right. So like the guy that you're singing to can't do concerts anymore
Yeah.
because he decided to put a lot of drugs in his body.
Yeah.
I just want to let you know that. I
Yeah.
just want to let you know that.
Yeah.
So the last thing I want to say real quick is recently my wife and I have made a combined decision to quit drinking alcohol.
Mhm.
And I don't mean just like for 3 months. I mean we're done, I think.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. And so my wife is working on it. I'm working on it. And it's something that has always been a part of our life, alcohol.
Mhm.
And so I think this is a huge role model
Hmm.
part where it's just like, I mean, I don't think alcohol is necessary anymore. I abused it when I personally abused it when I was a kid. My daughter is getting ready to go into seventh grade. That was the first time that I tried alcohol, seventh
Right.
grade.
Right.
And so I'm just like, holy shit, I feel now's the time to do it
Yeah.
because she's going to start going and being parts of activities and things. And so I want to lead by example. And I think
Yeah.
that term right there is the biggest thing in parenting, in
Yeah.
role coaching, role modeling is leading by example. And so
Yeah.
like we're taking steps to better ourselves and educate our kids on certain things like alcohol. And
Yeah.
I hope it rubs off.
Good for you. Good
Yeah.
for you. What will you do if she starts experimenting with alcohol?
Well, I'm just going to blatantly tell her all of your goals and dreams will be crushed. No.
That's the best way. Yeah.
No, I'm just going to tell her the truth like, "Hey, listen, here is see, I'm that parent who is brutally honest about certain things. I'm like, "Oh, you want to go ding dong ditch? What happens if a guy chases you down and beats the shit out of you?" Okay? "Oh, you want to drink alcohol? What happens if you get into a car and like in our town, there was a crash at that little bridge in town because of alcohol. And didn't one of those kids pass away?
I don't remember.
If one of them didn't pass away, they all went to the hospital, and one of them was in intensive care for a
Mm,
long time,
mm,
right? Because of alcohol. And so I am lucky. I've survived a major crash that was alcohol related when I was a senior in high school. And so my goal is to just be like, hey, listen, you decide to do this, here is the possible outcomes. Even though they could be rare and you take all these precautions, this is what could happen,
yeah.
right? You
Yeah.
drink, you get taken advantage of. You drink, you get in a car with someone who has been drinking. Dude, these are the outcomes. Are you okay with those outcomes? And, you know, maybe a little bit of like scared straight prison type stuff too,
Oh
So,
yeah. Yeah. No, absolutely. No, I respect the idea of being super open, and just real with your kids. I think if we're not going to be real with our kids, then what are we doing? Where are
yeah,
they going to hear it from?
exactly.
That's yeah, that's a decision I made a long time ago. Is like I want my kids to hear it from me before they hear it from some other fifth grader.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, where are they going to
Exactly.
get more realistic information from me or some kid in their class?
Yeah,
Like I want it to be from
I
me.
saw on YouTube this guy said this. Well, that guy
Yeah,
is wrong.
yeah,
Okay. Right.
yeah,
That was probably generated by AI.
yeah. Or it's like I heard him say that he was being sarcastic, and you're so young you don't know what sarcasm is, so you thought it was
Exactly.
real. Like
Exactly.
that's scary. Yeah, we need to
Exactly.
be like active participants in our kids' lives. Yeah,
Well,
right on.
finishing up here today, any final thoughts?
Um, I can say that, well, first of all, I respect you for stopping drinking.
Yeah.
It's a thing that I've cut way back on in my life that used to be so much more central, and it's just the older I get, the less of a place I have for it. So I have a lot of respect for you and your wife for that. I think that's super cool. I also I've seen you parent lots and lots and lots of times. I've seen you in action. You say role modeling and character is just how you carry yourself, and you don't know who's watching and whatnot. I respect the hell out of you as a parent. You're a wonderful example of a dad that's highly involved in their kids' lives, and it's
Yeah.
obvious that they love you. It's obvious that you love them. You've put a lot of work into those relationships, and I'm sure those relationships can tolerate a lot of stress. But yeah, I think you hold yourself to a high standard, and I think you hold your kids to a high standard, and I think that they're going to benefit from that in the long
Yeah.
run. So
I mean,
I, I
that's a two-way street, dude.
Mhm.
You're a great dad from outside looking in. Now you could be horrible inside the walls of your own house,
Yeah, I
but
try to get it all out inside.
hey, you don't win. Hey, like you're in the running for Father of the Year this year, Swisher. You've already got nicest guy in Swisher wrapped up. So
I don't know
now,
about that.
no, it's true. Now,
Uh,
now you're going for Father of the Year, dude.
Yeah, right. No, okay, don't pull my wife. Don't ask her. Thanks. All right. Well, thanks, man.
All right. Well, until next time, guys, be sure you go to Spotify or iTunes, wherever you download this podcast. Please leave a 5-star review. One thing that we're trying to do is to, make this podcast fun, relatable, and bring relatable topics to all of the men out there who might be struggling in some way, shape, or form. Leave us a review. Share this with your friends. If you know someone who might be struggling or might need to hear a specific episode or topic, share it with them. Outside of that, Kyle, man, appreciate your time, and we'll talk to you guys next week.